We are Ole Miss Rebels. As Mississippi's flagship university, we dig deeper, see farther, work harder. We pioneered human organ transplants. We helped prove Einstein's theory of gravitational waves. We are conducting life-changing research that solves the problems of today. We are Ole Miss, transforming lives and the world.
Welcome to the POMcast with Stephen Willis. Now we're going to do things a little different. We are going to provide an honest look at Ole Miss athletics for the fan, by the fan, and of the fan. That is what we do. Hell be to me. I'm just kidding. Tune in for some Ole Miss sports news. We're going to give it to you straight. Yeah, right now. The POMcast starts now. It happens now. Holy cow. Listen to me. It's starting. Well, it's going to start right about now. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the POMcast. I'm your host, Stephen Willis, on this magical mystery tour we call Ole Miss Fandom. Thank you so much for joining us from the palatial Central Florida studios with Elsa out spinning in the Gulf. Hopefully we can get this in. There's not going to be an outage, but we will try our best to get it done anyway. But I'm kind of excited. Today in the show, this Matt Corral thing has just gotten absurd. Pro Football Focus just put out a list of the top 50 college football players, and Matt Corral wasn't on it. I mean, the only list, like I said earlier on Twitter, is like the only list that he shouldn't be on of top 50 best players is active NFL players. That's the only list that's acceptable to leave him off. So before we get started, I do want to tell you, you can catch us on Twitter at the Stephen Willis and at the Rebel Walk. Catch us on Facebook, facebook.com/POMcast, facebook.com/the Rebel Walk. You can catch us on YouTube at Positively Ole Miss. Subscribe, hit the bell. You'll not only know that we're streaming, you'll know what we're streaming about, and if you want to spend your time to go over to it. And we're on Twitch at Positively Ole Miss. You can catch us on Instagram as well at Rebel Walk. Again, that is at Rebel Walk. We are on Instagram as well. That's a new thing that was added this week. And so far, our view count is going pretty good. We're going to go over 1,000 total views for that platform today. So that is fantastic news. So we're expecting somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 to 7,000 views on that platform. Looking at the numbers, if it grows, I think we're going to undershoot that a little bit. But we're going to keep our goal right where they are, because we don't want to. We want to consistently under promise and over deliver, as opposed to the alternate. So that's kind of what we're doing. Thursday night, we're recording a Rebel Walk recruiting show with Leanne Herring. That's going to be excited. Tomorrow, I'm recording the Auburn preview. I'm going to keep who is with a surprise for the time being. And Friday is SEC After Dark being recorded, so that should be pretty fantastic as well. So we're starting to ramp up to football season, and we haven't even got into, we don't know what we're going to call it, but I'm going to call it Monday Morning Quarterback for now. We're going to do that show, and we're also going to previews and reactions of football season with the Rebel Walk recruiting show. There should be a show every day on top of the POMcast, so it should be a pretty fantastic network for you. Also, if it wasn't for Elsa, we would all already going through. But we're hoping to get you a hookup for your Disney travel in Central Florida with a travel agent that's on the ground here. So you can just pick up the phone and call to get questions answered and things like that. So it should be pretty cool. And we're also going to do some other things. We got some irons in the fire involving sports betting. And we've got some irons in the fire with some other stuff. So just keep an eye on. We're doing this slowly. I'm going to hit the road tomorrow to go talk to at least two of them, and I'm going to construct basically some fancy jargon to get you guys going. Today we got the one pager and the graphic, the ad pack, basically to get to people so they know what they're actually spending their money on. So that's pretty fantastic. We got a lot of great stuff coming down the pipe from Positively Ole Miss and the Rebel Walk. And we'll tell you about the Rebel Walk whenever we come back from break. But it's proving that you do not need to spend money to follow a sport or to have fun doing it, because that money isn't pressing you. So you'll see during football season we're going to do things a different way. But anyway, we're on Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, and Pandora also. We are on several smaller podcatchers, but it would take too long to list. It's only a 20 to 30 minute show. So we did that. We did the video. All right. So Pro Football Focus put out their top 50 best players in college football list, because this is list season. We are a little bit under 2 weeks until SEC Media Days. Thank God. And we can start really digging in and getting our hooks around football, because you have SEC Media Days, you have the car wash up in Bristol, that they do all this stuff for the SEC network and hit all the shows, and then it kind of comes back and gets ready for fall camp, and then fall camp happens. But we are under 2 weeks away from that countdown taking place. But right now we are still in list season. Pro Football Focus released a list of top 50 players in college football. Matt Corral was not on it. Nowhere. Top QBR quarterback, not on it. And this has gotten absurd. They're trying... Whenever you look at media, when I say wag the dog, this is an example of wagging the dog. This is preparing their smarter than anybody else pick. Their Zach Wilsons for next NFL draft. Matt Corral's going to be a huge riser. People are going to be able to say they saw it coming before it happened, and it's all just about their perspective. It's just a weird thing, because whenever you do these lists, and these journalists do these lists, they're incredibly lazy, to be fair, and they're also going to be the ones that select the list at the end of the season. So it really is a popularity contest that is going to be judged the same way. It's beginning to end. You have to do something really special in the middle to show up, and they can elevate you. Now, the NFL draft, they're going to pick you. They're not going to play this game. There's always somebody that gets picked early that just was out of nowhere, and the media calls it a reach. And the reality is there's 7 or 8 different systems in the NFL, and a single list is just a bad idea, because different players provide different strengths for different teams. Especially, can you imagine Lamar Jackson coming out in this draft and going to Kansas City? They'd call him a bust. Can you imagine Patrick Mahomes going to Baltimore? They'd call him a bust. Can you imagine both of them going to last year's San Diego team with Jordan Hebert? They'd call him a bust. And they make it look like the player is the issue, but the reality is the wrong player got drafted for the wrong system. Somebody listened to all the noise instead of doing their own thing. And the reality is, back in 1985, there were 2 systems. There was the Bill Walsh tree, and then there was the Parcells tree. And every now and then somebody would pop up and do little different offensively, but it was an aberration and not an actual real thing. There were really only 2 systems, the West Coast system, and then I guess we'll call it the East Coast system. And out of that, Mel Kiper rose, and he was able to construct a single list of players in the draft. Remember, there's only 2 systems. There's only 2 things you have to fit in, and Basically, in that, the same type of players fit in those systems. So one list would work. It would absolutely work in the old school days of Mel Kiper coming up with that. Then, instead of football being a trickle-down thing, it became a trickle-up thing, to where college is now influencing the NFL more than the NFL is influencing college. And college is being influenced by high school. At Presbyterian College in FCS, the coach that doesn't punt just got hired. That is an example of that, like clear as day. But because of that change, all of a sudden the number of systems started to balloon, show up everywhere. You've got the air raid system in Arizona. You've got a hybrid of it in Kansas City, though it's not quite the air raid. It's a little mix of the West Coast and the air raid. But, you know, if you listen to Mike Leach talk about him and Hal Mummy, the air raid was like birthed from the West Coast and Lavelle Edwards and those guys back in college. And then you have the basically run option game, to the way you can make the NFL it work in the NFL in Baltimore. You've got the old school pro style offenses, such as what San Diego was doing last year. They were actually, you look at them and they looked like a Washington Redskins team from the 1980s. I mean, that's just what they looked like. The New England system, there's multiple coaches running that now. What Josh McDaniels does, what Miami is doing as well, what Tua is going to go through. So it's like system on top of system on top of system. Each one of those systems will be responsible for a different list. You rank a top 100 players, it's going to look completely different in Miami than it does in San Diego, than it does in Kansas City, than it does in Baltimore. Completely different because they need different type players. Now, this is a good thing for the NFL. This is going to make the football better. This is going to make it easier to find a thing like a quarterback. This is the reason height all of a sudden disappeared as a requirement to play. And you got Kyler Murray running around there 5'9". He's not facing the same thing that Doug Flutie faced back in the day. He can do things normally because he's used to playing quarterback at that height. The defensive line is no different. Now, what the offense is doing forces the defenses to play a certain way. And tempo forces teams to not substitute. But the point is different systems require different lists. So whenever you get a top 50 list, see, I brought it back, a top 50 list that does not include Matt Corral, you have to wonder what the system they're recruiting to is. The number one is Spencer Rattler. Him and Matt Corral are really two sides of the same coin. They play the game the same way. Matt Corral had a higher QBR. Spencer Rattler had more disaster games last year. I don't understand the difference between the two, but one is ranked number one and one is not on the list. And they're essentially the same quarterback. That's what makes me so upset about Spencer Rattler. Because when you watch him play, he looks like Matt Corral. When you watch Matt Corral play, he looks like Spencer Rattler. They're the same stylistically same quarterback. But one goes up number one gets left off the list. Why? Well, laziness and the name that's on the side of the helmet. That is the difference between Spencer Rattler and Matt Corral to the national media, to the lazy media. To where everybody's going to be like, oh, okay, Matt Corral got drafted third. How did that happen? And it's because he's a good player and because you completely missed going into the season. This is absolutely absurd at this point. It really is. It's absolutely absurd. Why? Is it because you haven't seen Matt Corral? It's okay to admit that. There's no way that a small staff like Pro Football Focus can watch every team in college football. Now, the key is to not act like you do. There's not enough time in the day to get it done, but don't act like you do it. Whenever you make decisions like this, it actively shows that you're truly not paying attention. It's laziness. Whenever you do a list like this, it is your responsibility to be well informed, to know what's going on. To understand that if you were to take away those two games, Matt Corral eliminates those two disaster games and turns them into normal style games. He has like 5 interceptions for the year. He has a chance to have a special year. He ran for nearly 600 yards last year. Threw for nearly 3,000. People don't understand that because for some reason they focus on the defense last year. In the beginning of the year, everybody's talking about, oh, there's a defensive problem. Yeah, there's a defensive problem. You just got a new coach. That new coach had no spring. That new coach had no fall camp to make any evaluations or get any film from. All he had was regular game week style practices going up to the beginning of the season. There's no way there's enough reps to get the film, get the players in the right places. On top of everything else, you're going from a 3-4 to this hybrid defense that kind of plays a 3-4 with 4-3 rules. It's designed to be a hybrid. It's going to be difficult. By the end of the year against Indiana, you could see that we were serviceable. Not much depth, but we were serviceable. Now, looking at it, you've got a completely rebuilt defensive backfield in the middle three. You got some depth at cornerback. You've got Tywone Malone, a top 100 player, playing defensive line, along with Isaiah Iton and Jamon Gordon. So you have to think the defensive line and the defensive backfield is going to take a step. And you have a linebacker that was an honorable mention, all Big Ten player coming in as well. There's no reason to think the defense isn't going to be better. Just the pieces they've added, Jacob Springer, Otis Reese, Chance Campbell, the 3 defensive linemen, they're going to make everything better. I'm really looking forward to watching Tysheem Johnson. I know I say that seemingly every show, but until football season starts, I'm going to pound that drum. But we're going to take a short break, and I'm going to come back and rant a little bit more about this. And this thing has just gotten absurd. It just really has. But stick around. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. Just had to get a swig of water, go to the bathroom real quick. So thank you very much. I'm Stephen Willis. Thanks for joining us on this magical mystery tour we call Ole Miss Fandom. You can catch the POMcast and other videos on the rebelwalk.com. Evelyn and her team do a fantastic job. They really do. They provide a subscriber level experience for no money. Doesn't cost you anything but your time, and boy, oh boy, is it worth it. There's experts for football, basketball, baseball, different voices for different sports instead of people that just do not have time to cover everything. So everything becomes formulaic, and you know how it goes. But these guys do not have to do that. If you want to check out what they're doing, go over to therebelwalk.com. Again, that is therebelwalk.com. Tell them the Positively Ole Miss, the POMcast, sent you. Anyway, so in the first half of the show, we were talking about the Pro Football Focus list and everything. We kind of went stream of consciousness after that. I do apologize for that, but this thing has just gotten absurd. This ignoring of Matt Corral. How can the top quarterback in the SEC be ignored? Because the question isn't, like in the Heisman Trophy, there's always people that's going to point out, well, that's really a team award. Will Ole Miss win enough games for him to qualify for that? And that's a valid argument. But whenever you start talking about top players in college football, that doesn't count that. That is just a great point. Vanderbilt could have a player in the top 10 on that list. It's not anything related to a team award. Total QBR, deep passes, everything. This is a guy that everybody is going to be surprised that he's having as great a year as he is, and all he did was replicate what he did last year. Did people not see what he did last year? Did they not watch the Alabama game? I just don't understand. I just don't understand. He's the top quarterback in the SEC, and any other top anything in the SEC would be high on that list. There's 2 LSU corners in the top 10. There's no list out there where 2 teammates that are cornerbacks belong on the same list. It's lazy reporting. It's not doing your job. And by not doing your job, I mean what you claim that it represents. Anyway, Friday at 2 o'clock, the Rebel rankings this week. Top Ole Miss quarterbacks of the 2000s. Looking forward to that. I had fun making it. If you have any comments, feel free to drop them below. I'm all here. I can handle dissenting opinions, and it's just a pretty good thing. And the list of the 2000s is probably not what you expect. It's probably not what you expect because different people have different rankings of quarterbacks when it comes to Ole Miss. It's one of those hot button issues. That's the reason I wanted to stop it at 2000. And I just want it to go. Now, there's certain players in this ranking, like Matt Corral is still going on. It's like he's not a total package. He could be number 1 on this list. He could be not on it at all. And it's all really coming to this year. So he's not eligible to go on there. I'm going to put Romero Miller as knowing how important he was. He was important back in the 90s, so I'm going to put him back in the 90s. So the 2000s basically start with Eli and move on from there. So nobody got left off because of what they're doing. I do realize, though, that Romero had that 1 year in 2000. I understand that. So, great player. Would be on any top 5 list that it would include the 90s and all that. But I just want to keep him on the 90s so he's not crossing over. So he's going to go hang out with Stuart Patridge and Paul Head and Rush Owls and Tom Luke and the boys in the 90s. So we've got that coming up. We got the Rebel Walk recruiting show, the second episode of that coming up. We're recording that Thursday, so you should probably see that either Thursday night or Friday morning. What else we got going on? We got the Auburn football preview, recording that tomorrow. Very excited about that. And I think that's about it unless somebody commits. Now we'll probably go back and do a commit watch for Taylor Groves and Reginald Hughes as this goes on, but we have time to get that done. They committed before we started doing this, and we'll see how the busyness takes us. But this weekend is, we're going to go out and try and find you guys some good stuff that others cannot get because really where they are. So we're going to try and take advantage of that. Also, SEC After Dark Friday night. So that should be really fun. And we're going to, over the next couple of months, do an Best of the West and a Beast of the East for their podcast and put it on the channel. And doing that, we'll be able to do different things and have a different audience. So expect a ton more videos is what I'm saying. I'm not going to be a part of Beast of the East or Best of the West. I mean, I might produce it, but it's going to show up on my channel and my feeds. But I won't actually be. So it'll be a different voice. So those that are used to doing this show, it'll be a different voice and probably not even Ole Miss guys. I think Best of the West, the winner will be Kevin O'Bannon and Jake. I'm terrible with names. Ever since I had the brain surgery, just terrible with names. But those are the guys from our previews that you can count on for the Best of the West. The Beast of the East would be Corey Burton and somebody else. And I'm talking about Eastern Division. So the Best of the West will be a Western Division SEC show. Beast of the East will be an Eastern Division SEC show. And SEC After Dark will be the full SEC show. To go along with the POMcast, which is the Ole Miss show. So every possible angle that you could want information from, it will be coming. We're going to cover football pretty ridiculously. And this is to go on top of, like I said, the Monday Morning Quarterback, the Rebel Walk Recruiting Show, the preview show with Evie Van Pelt. We are doing that a little bit later on this week, a little test for that to make sure it's good to go. The reaction show, we're still waiting to get figure out who's lined up for that one. So we have tons of videos. I am expecting this thing to get in the 100 to 200,000 range fairly quickly as far as monthly views. And it's all because of you guys. We're doing a non-political show that's just talking about the subject matter that we want to talk about. If it's an Ole Miss show, we're going to talk about Ole Miss stuff. If it's an SEC show, we're going to talk about SEC stuff. So that's what we're doing. And doing all of that, you guys are flooding in. We're averaging about growing 50 to 100% a month. Some ridiculous number. The normal growth rate would be about 12%. That would be acceptable. But we're 50 to 100% over the course of the month. That's how much we're growing. And we do a podcast, although we don't pander to it that often. But thank you very much. Those are the shows we have coming up this week. Coming up to SEC Media Days, under 2 weeks. I think today is 2 weeks exactly from Lane Kiffin taking the stage. So, I'll give you a couple minutes back, as always, it seems like. But this being list season, that should be understood. I hope everybody has a good day. Stay safe with Elsa strafing up the coast. And until tomorrow, howdy toddy.